Nigeria's political season is well and truly in full bloom. And as expected, the politicians are making the most of it, seizing every singular opportunity to engage the people as they seek their votes and validation. Irrespective of the challenges faced, or to be more succinct with present-day realities, the dangers involved, these engagements have been taking place at all places during the day and well into the wee hours of the morning.
Indeed, but it is not also instructive that once again, places of religious worship and other numerous faith-based platforms have become the favorite hunting grounds for Nigerian politicians as they plot their ways towards electoral success in 2023. What exactly is it between Nigerian politics and churches and mosques? In this age-old holy or unholy alliance, who has fared better, the citizens or their political patrons?
Well, poignant questions those. But let us, at this point, bring in somebody that can help us with the answers. Achike Chude is an author, good governance advocate, and public affairs analyst. Welcome to the program, Achike.
Always a pleasure.
Welcome, Achike. How are you today?
Very fine.
Excellent.
I don't need to ask you because I know you're looking fine, both of you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. It takes hours to get this look, don't be fooled.
Typical of women too, I know, and we appreciate them.
I know. That's the price we pay for being beautiful. Anyway, let's even start by discussing this issue of politics and religion.
Yeah.
I mean, how can the relationship between politics and religion be problematic and at the same time beneficial?
Yeah, man is a religious being, yes. No doubt about that. Man is also a political being. So I think it's about how you blend both. Over the centuries, people have grappled with that issue of religion and the state. How much role, how much influence can we allow, from the pulpit? Because religious exhortations are obviously different from the imperatives of governance, and so there must be a dichotomy. The reality is that people who are in government are also have a faith that they are expressing, but that is why I think you have a constitution that is able to set the boundaries between religion and the faith. And I think if you also notice the fact that for a very long time Nigeria has continued to pump money into religious endeavors, like for instance the pilgrimage, of the both major religions in this country is something that a lot of people have come down hard against. The government has no business in promoting, religion. Nigeria is a secular state, and so you must operate. In our constitution is secular and insists on the secularity of the Nigerian state. So governments have no business involving themselves in the religious inclinations of a people. It is purely an individual thing, and people have consistently said that government should ensure that they remove their hands from religion. It tends to distort the politics.
That I think works both ways. I also think that churches and mosques have no business being involved in politics.
Well, to some extent, but it depends on the level of involvement. Again, don't also forget that church people, either those who go to church for worship or even the leadership of the church are also political people. They also have an idea of what should constitute government. So you can see, an interdependence in a way and an overlapping of some of these issues. And that's why the laws have to be very clear, in defining the boundaries and the thresholds under which one should operate and one should not, go beyond. And so these are the issues, obviously, because political actions are also expressed, have their expression in the lives and the welfare of the people.
Absolutely.
So you must ask questions. So even if when things are going bad, you have, a decision to make about the kind of, it's a duty, about the kind of leadership that would be good for you, that would also be good for religious freedom. Because the sense that the fact that we're also trying to say, look, let us separate religion, politics from religion, does not also not mean that politics does not have a duty to defend the freedom of religion, the freedom of expression, and all the other fundamental freedoms as enshrined in international conventions, the African,
Let me ask you a question. I was discussing religion and politics with someone very recently. What role do you believe money plays in the fact that religion and politics are intertwined in Nigeria today? Someone said, Nigeria and religion are intertwined because they are both one of the most successful industries in Nigeria. I said, why would you say that? They said some of Nigeria's wealthiest people are either politicians or religious leaders. What role do you believe money plays in Nigeria's politics today?
And some of the poorest people in this country are also religious people too. And they're people who, should have some level of political understanding, and they do not have. So it depends on the spectrum you're looking at it from. The vast majority, if you're talking about religious people, it's just a very few of them, especially at the level, the top hierarchy of some of these religious institutions that are actually exceedingly very rich, filthy rich, obscenely rich, no doubt about that. While the vast majority of their people, are wallowing in absolute poverty. And of course, we remember that statement that religion is the opium of the people.
Yes,
so religion also has become an instrument, really in a way of oppression. There's no doubt about that. Because people use religion, to defend, and to justify some of the atrocities that also happen even within the society. That is a truth that nobody can. But we must also remember that the essence of religion is also to liberate. And so, if you look at, for instance, Christ, he said the poor, how did he put it? He tells the rich young man, go sell your property and come follow me. Foxes have holes, dens, lions have dens. The Son of Man has no place to lay, he said. That is true religion. That is a religion that is sacrificial. A religion that that believes, that places oneself, at the service of other people. So it is not a religion of just a few people dominating, while the rest of their converts remain in absolute poverty. That cannot be true religion. So there is the true religion and there is the false religion. There is no doubt about about that. But again, sometimes it's difficult to even separate in terms of the practitioners of religion.
It is difficult.
And the politicians, because there's a Siamese twin kind of arrangement between both. One feeds off the other. One needs the other for validation. One makes has some political ambitions and interests and influence, and he feels that the churches or the mosques are the best places to get the kind of support that he needs, because he has very rich either imams or geos and the rest who have tremendous influence over their impoverished adherents. And so they use that as a basis to launch, as a basis to launch some of these politicians into a bigger political spectrum.
Okay, speaking of that, it appears today that we're witnessing a new breed of religious leaders who use the pulpits to advance their political views and play unhindered active partisan politics. They've used their platforms to engage people in party politics and endorsements of candidates. I say this because I've actually seen one or two situations where particular pastors or preachers were actually canvassing for one particular candidate. And I think because they have such a strong followership, I don't know whether it's right for them to convince their members to support somebody that they support. Like the Queen of England, for instance, while she was alive, with all the prime ministers that went through her, she never showed her personal opinion. She only advised. And I think as pastors, pastors or imam or clerics, that's where it should be. You also have situations where presidents depend on one individual, one spiritually. Indirectly, that individual can actually be ruling the country. They get so obsessed with this individual that anything the individual says, they go by it unquestionable. This happens with marabouts, it happens with clerics, it happens with Christian leaders. So at what point at what point would there be some embargo on them actually advocating for a candidate on the pulpit?
I don't know whether it should be,
maybe not embargo, maybe that's a strong word, but I feel that
I agree.
They're exploiting their powers.
And what you're saying is exactly what is happening. There's no doubt about that. But you also have to realize that some of these anomalies, because it's an anomaly, some of these anomalies that we're seeing are happening within the context of a failed government, within the context of misgovernance that has, gone on in this country for far too long. So when you talk about Nigeria, for instance, I mean, what context am I talking about? The breakdown of political institutions and institutions of state generally. Socioeconomic, crisis brought about by a group of political elites who are not patriotic, who are not interested, in the objectives of the common interest of the people. And so you have a situation where the elites indulge in all kinds of misbehavior. There is the elitist power struggle, within themselves. They play exclusionary politics. They have ensured deep inequality within the system, marginalization and some of these other negatives. And so in the midst of this, you have people who are riding on the back of parochial sentiments, to mobilize people around a particular cause. And why is that? Because institutions of state that are supposed to play certain key roles, for instance, in making sure that whenever you have group dissatisfaction within the polity, that these institutions of state are there, to intervene, on the basis of the respect for the constitution and the rule of law. But when such institutions fail in the process, what it does is that it empowers the group that feels secluded, or isolated from governance. And sometimes it leads to breakdown of law and order. It even leads to acts of violence because, they feel that the state is participating in their own persecution. So these people we are talking about now, these elites, have the tendency to mobilize the ordinary people along these, these fault lines that the government institutions, who, fortunately have not even been able to address. Rather, they have exacerbated. So that is what we are also seeing. There was something the late Gani Fawemi said one time when people were asking him about governance and all that, and he said, "Look, that the only thing that will make people like him irrelevant is that, and truly that he wants to be relevant in the scheme of things. He doesn't want to keep on engaging, with the Nigerian society. He wants to face other things. But for as long as there's bad governance, people like him have no choice. They have to be involved in what is going on.
That's understandable.
So
like
the same thing, for as long as, when we begin to move in the right trajectory, politically, some of these people will morph into irrelevance. Obviously, these people we're talking about. What is empowering them is the failure of the system.
I agree.
Between, and then it has brought about that collaboration between, the politicians or the political elites and themselves. And that convergence is what we are seeing, that is being used in a way that is deleterious, that is not healthy for the for the interest and progress of this country.
There was a father from the East, who was so vociferous when it came to politics. And I remember the church as a body actually banned him for a few months, or warned him. I don't know if you recall, I don't want to call his name. He was the father I'm talking about from the East. So my point is that at least there's somebody to curtail such excesses. There's a body to curtail such excesses. Because really, you, as a pastor or a spiritual figure, you have no business taking politics to the pulpit.
No, in fact, you see, I think it was one of the, was it Pope John Paul II or so, talked about governance, talks about politics and so on, and he talks about the role of politics in the lives of the people, and that that governments have been instituted, really, by the people to lead the people to certain, ends politically, so that the choice of political leadership it's not a choice that the church makes on behalf of the people, but it's a choice that the people themselves should be able to make themselves. But you also now realize that from what you're introducing is that when it comes to some of these issues you're talking about, then you are also talking about the duties and responsibilities of every single one of us to also work on the the ordinary Nigerians. The reality is that some of these things that are going on simply because the vast majority of our people are not educated. And I'm not just talking about...
So it's about brainwashing.
Yes, exactly. So I'm not just talking about the education that comes from the four walls of a university.
And lack of exposure.
You can have political consciousness even without going to the university. So the vast majority of our people are not politically conscious. They do not understand their position even before the politicians. So they are easily influenced. They do not realize that once they can act together, that they constitute a bigger force than those people that they have put in power.
Well,
but you hear statements by Nigerians, by the ordinary people saying, it is government. When something is going wrong and you want to mobilize around a particular cause, you hear people saying, it is government. Nobody can fight government. You know government is powerful. Government can destroy you. Government is not more powerful than the people.
Yes,
government is the people.
Strength,
exactly. Government is the people.
Over time, we are learning that.
And so even if you look at the basic explanation of a definition of democracy, government of the people, for the people, by the people.
Lack of exposure
but we get to a level, just like in Nigeria today, where you cannot exactly make that claim. Because what we have today is government of the few, for the few, and by the few.
Let's look at Rwanda for a case study. When Rwanda significantly reduced religious places of worship from mosques to churches, they saw a significant increase in employment. And this is because a lot of the churches were converted to factories and industries, and they were creating jobs. Rwanda is exporting products now. Their airport is fully functional. I'm able to buy things and bring to Nigeria. Underdevelopment, we can say, has played a huge role from not just the government side, but also the religion side. Not just, look at Rwanda's case study. If we're able to focus more on development and reduce our involvement in religious activities, playing a role in politics, I think we'll be able to see some changes there in educating the population.
And obviously, one can't, I argue with that. Because, the fact that, if you look at, go to the Oregon axis, then you go to Mile 2 and all those other places. There are factories everywhere. Massive factories that were employing people. But as the economy, the downturn, and the politicians, who could not, plan anything, who could, exactly. So most of these factories became moribund, and they were being bought over, every single one of them, by churches. And so factories were turned into churches. And then they now make all kinds of promises to the people. Because, for instance, people, they even promise jobs. They when the jobs are not there. It is not the responsibility of the churches and the mosques and all that to talk about, production of jobs and the rest. It is the duty and responsibility of government. But because government has also abdicated its responsibility, the churches moved there, the mosques moved there. But like you said, you have a man in Rwanda, and of course, who has experienced, the atrocities that happen in Rwanda. And so you have a citizenry that also realized that even with the genocide that took place in Rwanda, the churches did not stand up with their moral authority to also ensure that people, because that was the duty of the churches, is the duty of religion, to ensure that people are ordered in the right way, and that people look after one another. But that did not happen. Instead, you saw some of them by default or whatever reason also participate in the tragedy that took place in Rwanda. So now, having learned from that, having learned in a most tragic way, they have realized that we cannot continue along that path. And that is a lesson that Nigeria should learn.
I think
because we have pushed the boundaries and the frontiers of religion to an insane level. Where certain things, that should be abhorrent, to a decent person and to a decent society have become the order of the day. So obviously something needs to be done.
Like the time of COVID, what pertinent roles the churches play?
Well, I would. It's not all that bad. Let's not also forget.
I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying it's all bad.
Let's also not forget, because in as much as, and it is true that we should excoriate the churches for their failures, and their failures are many. We should also remember the motherless babies' homes that were built. By churches, hospitals that are also charitable ventures and so on. Some are doing it. Some are into it. But for a vast majority, they can do more. But for a vast majority of the churches, especially the mega churches, those things do not figure, in their itinerary, and that is the reality. So where are all these monies going? When you have, religious people, and we don't want to specify, but you see, in the midst of so much poverty, you're spending how much, for instance, to buy a jet and to fly a jet all over the world, and so many others. So these are some of the things we are talking about, and it's not just the churches, also the mosques and all these other, and the marabouts that you also talk about, because our leaders also indulge in some of this fetish behavior, and are now governed, by whatever metaphysical forces, aesthetic, whatever, rather than the laws of the land. And that's why you have the darkness, I would say, that has enveloped the land.
Another question I want to ask. is that, especially with this Tinubu Shetima Muslim ticket, I remember Abiola's time, I think his running mate was King Igbe. I'm not saying that religion should not play a role, but we have almost overshadowed the North and South, because the whole thing was about rotational North and South spreading powers evenly. And even though the Muslim ticket might, leave a sour taste in some mouths of some people, I feel that religion should not overshadow your origin. In other words, even though you have a Muslim ticket, do you understand? It doesn't necessarily mean that they will not make a good couple as vice president and president.
No, I agree.
Like, I mean, for instance, remember that TikTok, that video that we had of hoodlums dressing in
church regalia and all that.
I mean, how far are you going to push this button? Because if anything, this emphasis on religion is causing a great divide. It's not giving us one voice. We're already North and South and already divided by origin.
So much emphasis
we
on
need
that.
to get closer. So I feel that the Muslims and the clerics and the spiritual leaders should put more emphasis on the merit and the capability.
I agree. But
rather than what religion they want.
Voters ourselves.
But at the same time, we should not overlook the fault lines in the country. There are fault lines. There are fault lines. There are fault lines that have been emphasized, by the political class in this country. And I have always said that Nigerians on their own have always been able to live on their own peacefully, trade with one another, intermarry, intermarry among themselves and all that. So, but anytime there is crisis, religious or ethnic or whatever, look behind it. You will see some members of the political elites involved in it.
Okay, they fuel the fire.
No, they are the ones that fan the embers of the division. And of course, like you said, you talked about Abiola, to tell you that at a time when that candidacy was announced, I mean, I didn't even think there's anything wrong with it. The former, Catholic Archbishop of Lagos, I think it was Olubunmi Okoje, who is now Cardinal, said it didn't matter.
Exactly.
You understand? In fairness to him, he said it didn't matter. It didn't matter to the Christians whether you have a Muslim ticket. All that matters is the quality.
Exactly.
But that Nigeria is far gone. That Nigeria
but what
is
has
far
caused
gone.
it? Is it not
and
the
how do we get it back?
Spiritual leaders dividing us that have caused it.
Exactly. That's why, I think the late, I'll try and remember his name, said that you cannot even call these people today that are in power a political class. That's an insult, even to a class. That what you have are political elites. Because a political class acts in a particular manner to protect themselves, while giving a little bit, of handout to the general population so that they can remain in power. But that these people, and that's why I say, for me, I've always believed that the people that are running this country today are not in love with Nigeria. They are neither patriotic nor committed to the nation state. And that is why they fan the embers of, religious divisions and the ethnic divide. But the reality again is that they must also be sensitive to the plight of the people, and the nuances of the Nigerian state.
Absolutely.
Because Nigeria is so divided. So when you talked about the Muslim ticket, it was not something at a time that showed sensitivity, even on the part of the political leadership of that party. And not just that again. We also have a little bit of problems, even with the PDP, the fact that there's this discussion about, are you going to have a president?
So much emphasis on that.
So all these things are there. And why are they there? I'm rounding up. Simply because we have not yet built a nation.
That goes beyond
when you build a nation, and the people have a sense of belonging, then these things will no longer matter to the people.
I hope. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Achike, for your. I wish we had more time to discuss these issues, but you really highlighted the pertinent problems that we're having in Nigerian politics, especially when it comes to religion being weaponized. And I hope that things will get better. And we'll move to greener pastures one day.
Thank you. We hope so too.
So that's all we have for today. You've been watching Perspective here on Arise News with me, Ruth Osime. And remember, life is a learning curve.
And I'm Olaterera Majekodumi Oniru. Goodbye for now.